A chilling wind swept through the dense pine forest as the moon cast its silver glow over the snow-covered land. High on a rocky outcrop, a lone wolf stood, his piercing yellow eyes scanning the valley below. He was called Shadow, an outcast from his pack, forced to wander alone. Yet, despite his solitude, there was an unshakable fire in his heart. On this particular night, Shadow's ears twitched as he picked up a faint sound. A cry, distant but desperate. His sharp instincts told him it was human. He tilted his head, listening closely, then let out a deep howl that echoed through the trees. The forest was silent for a moment before the cry returned, weaker this time. Without hesitation, Shadow sprang into action, bounding through the thick snow, his powerful legs propelling him forward. The scent of fear and cold reached his nose as he followed the sound. As he neared a frozen riverbank, he spotted a small figure half buried in the snow. The boy, no older than 7, was shivering uncontrollably, his lips a shade of blue. His clothes were too thin for the harsh winter night. Shadow sniffed at him cautiously, his breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. The child opened his eyes weakly, barely able to lift a hand toward the massive wolf. Most humans would have feared a wild predator so close, but there was no fear in the boy's eyes, only exhaustion and a plea for help. Shadow instinctively understood. He nudged the child gently, urging him to move, but the boy was too weak. Time was running out. Thinking quickly, Shadow curled his body around the boy, wrapping him in his thick fur. His warmth began to seep into the child's frozen limbs, but staying there would not be enough. He had to bring the boy to safety. Shadow let out another long howl, hoping anyone, would hear him. In the distance, a faint response came. A pack. He knew the voices well. They belonged to the wolves that had cast him out. He hesitated only a moment before picking up the child carefully by the collar of his jacket and beginning the trek toward the responding howls. The journey was slow and arduous. Shadow's muscles burned from the effort of carrying the boy, but he pressed on. The howls grew closer. Then, through the trees, he saw them. His old pack, led by a massive gray wolf named Fang. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, there was only silence. Then, understanding flickered in Fang's gaze. With a short bark, the pack closed in, forming a protective circle. Together, they moved swiftly through the forest, guiding Shadow and the boy toward the distant glow of a village. By the time they reached the outskirts, lights flickered in windows, and voices called in the night. A search party had been scouring the woods. As the wolves approached, the humans hesitated, but when they saw the child cradled in Shadow's jaws, fear melted into shock and relief. A woman, his mother, rushed forward, tears streaming down her face as she gathered her son into her arms. "He's alive," she sobbed, wrapping him tightly in her coat. Shadow took a step back, watching silently. His job was done. He turned to leave, but before he could disappear into the woods, the boy, now awake, reached out a trembling hand. "Wolf, thank you." For the first time in years, Shadow did not feel like an outcast. He lifted his head and let out one final, powerful howl. A sound, not of loneliness, but of triumph. And as the moon bathed the land in silver light, the wolves howled with him, their voices blending into the night, a song of unity, bravery, and the bond between man and beast. But Shadow's journey was not over. As he turned to leave, Fang stepped forward, blocking his path. The old alpha regarded him with quiet contemplation before giving a low, approving growl. The pack had witnessed his bravery. Perhaps, after all these years, his place among them could be restored. The other wolves circled around him, sniffing and nudging gently. It was an invitation, a second chance. Shadow hesitated. He had grown used to his solitude, but something inside him yearned for belonging. The boy, watching from his mother's arms, gave a small nod, as if encouraging him to stay. Shadow lowered his head in quiet submission, acknowledging Fang's offer. With that, the pack turned back toward the forest, their newest member joining them under the silver moon. As the village celebrated the child's miraculous survival, stories of the lone wolf's heroism spread. The people of the valley no longer saw wolves as mere predators, but as noble guardians of the land. Days passed, and Shadow embraced his role within the pack once more. He trained the younger wolves, passed on the lessons of survival, and remained watchful over the valley. Occasionally, he would venture near the village, always keeping a safe distance, watching over the humans he had saved. One night, a fierce storm swept through the land, blanketing the forest in a thick layer of ice. The winds howled like restless spirits, and the pack took shelter in a deep cave. Shadow, however, sensed something amiss. The scent of smoke carried through the storm. A human fire, but one burning, uncontrolled. Racing through the blizzard, Shadow followed the scent until he reached a small cottage engulfed in flames. The frightened cries of a child came from within. Without hesitation, Shadow leaped through the collapsing doorway, dodging falling beams and embers. The fire raged, heat licking at his fur as he searched frantically. There, huddled beneath a wooden table, was the same boy he had saved before, now trapped once more by fate. His mother lay unconscious near the doorway, overcome by the smoke. Shadow acted swiftly, nudging the boy toward the exit before gripping the woman's sleeve in his jaws and dragging her outside into the snow. The villagers arrived, battling the fire with buckets of water and blankets. They saw the brave wolf standing over the 2 lives he had just saved, and a hush fell over the crowd. No longer was Shadow just a beast of the wild. He was their guardian. As the flames died down, the boy knelt beside Shadow and buried his face in the wolf's thick fur. "You came back," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. Shadow licked the boy's cheek before stepping back. He turned toward the forest where his pack waited, their eyes gleaming with pride. He had found his purpose, not just as a wolf of the wild, but as a protector of both his kind and the humans who shared his land. And so, with one last glance at the boy who would never forget him, Shadow disappeared into the trees, his lonely howl at midnight, now a call of strength, unity, and undying courage.